Welcome to Stories from the River. I'm your guest host, Hope Stalker, and we're here to present a special series, Women in Leadership. In honor of Women's History Month, we've assembled some of the best and brightest leaders that Broad River has to offer to share their stories, lend their insights into what it's like to be a woman in leadership today, and to have a little fun. We ready to get started, ladies?
Ready.
Today we have Lynn Knowles with us. She is the Director of Merchandising. We have Janet Limecooler. She is the Director of Visual Impact. And we have April Whitener, AP Supervisor, here for us at Broad River.
Welcome to Stories from the River, a show in which we go behind the scenes at Broad River Retail.
I know you all long-serving memory makers. Can we hear a little bit more from you about how long you've been here and what did you start out doing at Broad River? Lynn, let's start with you.
I have been at Broad River since the fall of 2017. My first day was a market in High Point as a category manager, managing half of our merchandise assortment, both the furniture, both upholstery categories, occasional tables, home office, entertainment, and that was almost 7 years ago.
Well, you had a whirlwind first day, didn't you?
I did.
Janet is one of the longest serving memory makers that we have at Broad River. So Janet, how many years now?
It's been 20 plus years. I started, I think, the day before Black Friday in 2003. And I started as a, what we call them SSRs, but would be what we call now as a retail experience coordinator.
Well, you had a whirlwind first day too,
Sure
or a
did.
second day, especially for Black Friday. And April, how about you?
It'll be 4 years in June. I started in the midst of COVID, so I didn't really have a whirlwind first day. It's pretty quiet.
Remember you talking in your podcast about training, how you trained at one end of the conference table and our controller at the time, she was on the other end down there.
With our masks
socially
on.
distanced.
Yeah, I'll remember that one.
Oh,
And I
that's a
started
whirlwind
as
first day, too.
AP specialist. So
Lynn, when you started, did you see yourself eventually working into a leadership role, or was that something that you envisioned for yourself when you started?
I'll say I really did not know what I was getting myself into when I came to Broad River Retail. I have been in retail for 30 years, all apparel, and so furniture was completely new to me. I just took a chance. I didn't know how it would turn out. I was hoping for the best, and it has really been a fantastic experience.
Awesome. Janet, how about you?
No, I did not know that I would be here 20 years later. And then kind of going through everything. I think when I got this role, I was just getting out of bankruptcy claims with Wells Fargo, and it was something that I despised, so needed something completely different.
And April?
Yeah, I kind of knew when I started, there was so many things I thought that we could do differently that would really improve. So I kind of knew that I would eventually end up in a leader.
So we all elevated. I guess it would be safe to say, using our 2023 word of the year there, we all elevated. Janet, when you were in that SSR role in the store, and I remember those, they were behind the counter, what motivated you from that point to want to push forward to be a leader?
I probably at that point saw how inefficient things were. And even though I didn't think I was going to be a leader, I knew that I could make things better. So I just kind of strived to do that.
Very good. Very good. Lynn, how about you? What motivated you to push past those first couple of months to set your sights on a larger role?
Well, with the growth of Broad River Retail and the opportunities that I could see developing with more stores and more members on the team, that people need to be led. And I was just happy to set an example. And it's all started out in partnership with a team of 2, maybe 3 sometimes. We were rarely at full staff. And so just to identify that, yes, we could build something here that would really help Broad River and make an impact on the day-to-day sales.
Very nice. And as you built that team and as you started to see that position opening up for you, what were some of the challenges that you faced?
Proving myself. I mean, did I possess the characteristics that represent Broad River Retail and a leader that people could really follow? We all have varied experiences, and Some of us have had better leaders than others. And so just really understanding, okay, I do have the characteristics and qualities, not all of them today, but I see that this organization is going to give me the opportunity to develop.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I think a lot of us have felt that way through the years. We've seen that need in our organization, and we're like, I can step up, I can fill that, I can build that team to take care of that. April, what was your experience as you made it through your first few months in transition to a leader in your department?
Just kind of leading a company of our size. I was in a leadership position before, but it was a lot smaller company, and I feel like I didn't have to make changes as I had wanted in this role. So kind of trying to find the confidence to, okay, let's make these changes and accomplish it on a company of this size. So it took a lot of confidence, and I kind of had to build myself up. But
Yeah, we're going to talk about confidence in just a minute, because I think that's something that definitely needs to be shared. Janet, let's talk about, go back to what Lynn said just a minute ago. What are some of the characteristics that women possess that make them more effective leaders or can make them more effective leaders?
Confidence, business knowledge, I definitely think works is something that we all need. And just the tenacity to kind of take a leap, and see how everything goes. You're not always going to get it right, but sometimes you just have to kind of step outside and make it happen.
Lynn, how about you?
I think empathy. I mean, that's one thing that I think is super important from everybody, whether you're a woman or a male leader. And understanding really what makes your team tick and how to really key into what motivates them, set standards that everyone can get on board with.
So what do you guys feel is a dangerous trait that a woman can have in a leadership role that could sideline her career?
I think empathy, again, that's one of those things that can be completely misconstrued. Just because you can understand where a person is coming from does not make you a weak leader. And I think empathy by a female leader can be viewed differently than maybe empathy by a male leader. And I've worked places before. I mean, we are very fortunate at Broad River Retail where we work for leaders who are more empathetic than they are not. And for those of us who have worked other places, I'm going to say it's rare to even work for an empathetic leader. And so the fact that we're given the space to do that, and I think it all goes back to our company values. Like we care about each other, and that's really important. If we look at everything through that lens, that is empowering as a leader.
That's an interesting perspective, that you would have empathy as a good trait and a dangerous trait as well, because I agree it can be misconstrued as, you're being too friendly, you're being overly familiar, you're not building them the way that they need to be built. But sometimes that's what people need. They need that extra support in order to find the confidence in themselves that we did once upon a time to step into a leadership role. Speaking of confidence, how have you built confidence in your abilities and yourself throughout the years, Janet?
I definitely think when I started here, I was not very confident and didn't really know what I was capable of, and still maybe don't. But I can be really confident with the team that I lead. I can lead them, I can push for them and empathize with them. When it comes to self-confidence, probably that is my biggest opportunity of trying to, yes, I can definitely do this. But just being confident in what you're doing, I think that's part of it. Like 20 years of having that intrinsic knowledge, it definitely makes me feel confident in what I'm doing.
Definitely. April?
same. I'm very confident in my work because I know that I'm good, accounts payable, and I've done accounts receivable, so I know like the whole, but it's more finding confidence to take up space in meetings, especially like if, you're in a meeting with all these executives, finding the confidence to know that you belong there. You're in your position for a reason. You wouldn't be there if you weren't good at what you do. So I do have to constantly remind myself, you can do it. You're here for a reason.
Lean in,
Yeah.
girl. Cheryl Sandberg told us to lean in. I think it's time for us to do that. I always look at Lynn as being a very confident individual. She always just has this, self-assurance about her. Lynn, how do you find that confidence every day?
Because I know my identity is not tied up in what I do. And I sometimes lose sight of that. And when I lose sight of that, I either lack confidence or become very aggressive. And, it takes one tough life experience, like losing a job, to open your eyes to the fact that the job is not your identity. And where you find your identity then is where I draw my confidence from. And I try and live that out.
That's an amazing viewpoint to have. How would you turn around and instill that in your team?
Their identity is not in their 9 to 5. And so you made a mistake. We'll fix it. I mean, we do not lead by intimidation at this organization. And there was only one perfect person that ever walked this earth. And if we have that expectation for our teams, that is very disempowering. And so, look, things go wrong every day. We talk about this where we have processes in place because everything that goes left or right of the process has to be redirected. And we're in the furniture business. We want it, and everybody's trying to do the right thing.
That's exactly right. And that's very powerful. That's a good way to lead, especially if you can be transparent with your team and come clean even when you've made a mistake. We have 20 years, 18 years, however many years we have. If you come clean with your team and let them know that it's okay for you to say, I made a mistake, I made an error, I think that really goes a long way to kind of foster that confidence into them that they can take those risks, they can take those, big leaps like Janet was talking about earlier. So, yeah, I think that's amazing. April, do you have anything to say about instilling that in your team? You have an old young team. You have Lisa, who's been around for a while, and you also have Renee, who came not too long or before or after you did there. So how do you instill that in your team?
Yeah, especially with Renee, because she came from an education background. She had never done accounting, but I knew she would be perfect for the role. So she was just very nervous in the beginning and just afraid she was going to make a mistake. And I love to watch her grow into how amazing she has become in her role. And if I make a mistake, I'm like, guess what I did today? And I'll own up to it. And I'm like, it's fixable. Everything in accounting is fixable. So it's nice to kind of see a woman in that role, grow into a confident. Now she knows the position frontwards and backwards. So yeah, it's been very rewarding for me to see her.
That's amazing. Let's talk about mentors for a little bit. I am ashamed to say I never had one coming up through the ranks. I sometimes wish that I had tackled someone and made them my mentor. I feel like it was kind of a detriment to me to not have that. But how important is it for women of all ages to have a mentor? Not just young women starting out, but even more seasoned members of the team who are maybe approaching that 15, 20-year mark. How important is it for them to have a mentor? Janet, would you like?
I'm probably maybe not the best person to ask this because I've never really had a mentor also growing up. Right now, the person I lean towards is, I'll bounce ideas off people I work with, or a friend. Like I have one friend that, I'll reach out to her and kind of bounce questions off of her. But I'd never really had a mentor. So I think it would be important. I could probably think that they would have helped me more with my confidence throughout the years.
Lynn, do you have a viewpoint on that?
I do. I have the best mentor on the planet, and she is retired now. I'll give you her name and number. But Miss Betty Green has been my mentor for 20 years. And it's not so much it's more personal than it is professional, but it's all about perspective. Again, like this job does not define me. And I'm going to do the very best I can, and I work really hard at it. And I get wrapped around the axle and stressed out and all of that. And it takes one cup of coffee with her to like reset my mind of, okay, where is your focus? And my relationship with her is invaluable.
Amazing that you found that, to find that somebody to connect with, our word of the year for 2024, connect to kind of lay those foundations and to talk you down off of those ledges as well.
Exactly.
That's amazing. April, how about you?
So I didn't really have a female mentor growing up. My grandmother was a little bit of a mentor. She always just said, make sure you have an education and can take care of yourself. But I feel like it's important when you're starting out in a job to have women in leadership. So it kind of gives you I can be there one day, especially if in meetings, if you have, strong female leaders that are not afraid to speak out. So it's kind of important. It gives you the confidence. I know if I have to go into a meeting and I'm nervous, I think about all the other women in the meetings that seem to talk with no problem whatsoever. So I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it.
Well, I think if filling this podcast has taught us anything, is that we're all nervous. It's just in varying degrees, and we hide it very well. That's just one of the wonderful traits about women in leadership. So, Lynn, tell me, how do you think women could support women at Broad River in our own organization?
I think everything that we do, we have to filter, through what is the intention here and what's the right thing to do for Broad River, and assume positive intent on every account. That's something that a wise leader once told me, and it has really turned around my way of thinking. And I think young people also get lost in the fact that if they make a mistake or something goes wrong or they get an email from someone, like it just puts them on edge, when really we just need to find a solution. And that is where mentorship comes in, I think, to say, okay, let's think about what's really being said here, whether it's personal or professional. Again, I think that's really, really important.
Very nice. Janet, how do you think women could support other women at Broad River?
I think we do a really good job of it. I think there is a platform. I know that we all reach out to each other on different occasions. And one thing I've definitely learned from Lynn and working with her, she is really great about talking about what is the intended outcome or what is the unintended, consequence of what's going on. And if you can look at it through that scope, I think that we're going to be able to better support each other that way.
April, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh, to not be afraid to take risks, not be afraid to kind of be the leader that you can be. I was always afraid when I was just starting out to make any changes in a company that you were going to rock the boat, and there's policies in place for a reason. Don't question them. But as I've gotten older and kind of really learned the role, I'm not afraid to speak up because you'll just get a no.
That's the worst thing to say.
Yeah.
No. Lynn, how about you? What's one piece of advice you wish you could give your younger self?
Do not fear rejection. That is the biggest roadblock that I face everywhere in my life. Is I'm fearful of rejection, and so I don't take risks, or I haven't put myself out there in the past to say, okay, yes, I can do this. And what's the worst thing that can happen? It depends on where your identity is anchored.
Very nice answer. That's amazing. Janet, how about you? What's one piece of advice?
Trust others. I think just trust others to do their job and know that you don't have to do it all alone.
That's a nice perspective. I think that's something that a lot of women, especially just in workplaces, not leaders, can struggle with, is that trust. And when we go back to the question before about the dangerous trait, that can be one of the dangerous traits. If you don't trust the people you're working for, you don't trust the team that you're leading, that can certainly sideline you. I believe you're not going to go as far as you could if you have complete trust in someone. We're going to move into a different set of questions, and these have to do with gender roles and stereotypes. And there's a lot of statistics involved in these questions. And I think Lynn or Janet said it best earlier. We are very fortunate where we work. We work with a bunch of empathetic, very evolved men. So these may not apply to us as much as they do in other workplaces. I'm not going to say it's not a problem, because there's always going to be a little bit of that underlying current of gender roles and stereotypes in any company that you work for. But we are very fortunate that we tend to work in a much more evolved company, that we would not face a lot of this. But the first one says women who are assertive or take charge, they can be called bossy or other B words. Let's be honest, but not a man. Why do you think this is, and do you think it's still true today, Janet? Why do you think it is that they can call us bossy, but if they're assertive and aggressive and they go after what they want, they're passionate?
Right. I don't know why. I've probably been called one of those B words before. But it's also, it could be, this might be the unpopular opinion. It could be just how I'm stating it as well. So I don't want to say that that's happens all the time. It could just be if I had a little more trust and confidence, then it wouldn't come across that way.
April, how about you? Do you think this trend could continue to improve or start to improve over the next 5 to 10 years as more women take their place in the workplace?
I feel like it's already improving, that as more like strong leadership type women are, in the media and in politics, I feel like it's making it more commonplace that women have this type of personality that makes great leaders. They're strong, opinionated, and not afraid to ask for what they want and know their worth. And I think that men also are realizing that that's not just for men, that women can be this way too. So I think it's getting better with each generation, thankfully. So there's hope for my daughter's future.
Lynn, do you feel the same? Do you feel like it's improved from when you started your career to now?
Absolutely. And I love this question, and I don't want to turn this into a psychology session, but I think the first powerful woman that any man sees is most likely his mother. And when they come to work and they see other women who are smart and can make things happen, like they're thinking, I don't know, this makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Like, I don't pretend to get into a man's head, but like I think about, okay, what can they possibly be thinking here? And so I do think it's much better than it was 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even. I mean, we've all been through a really life-changing event, the pandemic. And so we have all been given an opportunity to prove, number one, what's important to us. Number two, how much we care about people. And I think that has forced a level of empathy across a lot of platforms and companies that we may not have seen otherwise.
And I think a big part of that change came from the fact that, we were all remote for so long, and maybe men were inside the home and seeing what happens on a day-to-day basis. We're there working just as hard as they are, but we're also doing the school drop-off and pick up. I know that's one thing April and I talk about a lot. And, we're doing the laundry and we're doing the dishes and the dinner. So, yeah, that's an interesting perspective there. Moving on to a different question that may be a little bit more psychologically based. Studies have shown that men will apply for a job when they only have 60% of the requirements, but a woman will wait until she has 100% of those job requirements that are listed out. Why do you think that is? Janet, why do you think that is?
Probably because fear of rejection. They think they may not measure up.
That's interesting. Lynn, how about
I
you?
would say the same thing. Lack of confidence, fear of rejection. It's all kind of the same thing when it comes to that. It's frustrating. Like when you read a statistic like that, and I read the question ahead of time, and I was like, oh yeah, that's totally me. Because I look at a job posting, even when I came to Broad River Retail, I'm like, I know this, I can do, or talk with Manny, I can do this, I can do that, but I don't know a thing about furniture. So they're probably not going to hire me.
I think we find that a lot of these issues that we feel like we have, the overarching theme there is the confidence, and it's the the background, do I have what it takes? And April, how do you feel about that? Would you apply for a job if you only had 60% of the requirements and you would wing it? No, I'm a fly by the seat of my pants type of gal. I mean, just like anybody else. But I'm not gonna do that. I'm like Lynn and Janet. I'm not gonna apply for a job until I feel like I can do it well, and I don't have to learn as I go, and I can hit the ground running. How do you?
Yeah, I think just women in general, we're overthinkers anyways, and we have so much self-doubt that even if you do apply for it and you get it, you're going to be worried the whole time, can I do this? Am I good enough to do this? So yeah, that's understandable.
As we talk about these things, I sense this overarching theme of, confidence and finding that within yourself to speak up and lean in and take part in these things. But, there's always that small voice in the back of your head. You don't belong here. You're just a placeholder until they can find somebody better. And we know that now it's called imposter syndrome. Are you familiar with the term, April?
As of recently, probably within the past year or two.
Do you feel like that may affect more women than it does men?
Possibly. I've definitely felt it, but mine was more from like an economic background. I grew up, very, very poor background. So I always had this thought in my mind, and it was never being a woman. It was, I grew up lower class, and I always think people can tell that I don't belong here. I'm not good enough to be here. Finally gaining confidence through therapy, which I highly recommend.
Amen.
I do belong here. Doesn't matter, woman, poor, rich, wherever you came from. I'm here now, and I earned the spot that I'm in now.
Hey, man, that's an awesome answer. Lynn, have you ever been affected by imposter syndrome?
I have, just from a lack of confidence. So, I mean, you see my imposter syndrome every day. I mean, that confidence is a shield. It's a protectant. I'm trying not to get hurt. I'm trying not to get found out that I might not know something. I mean, it's less and less just because of the environment at Broad River Retail. In all honesty, I don't feel like I have to put on airs like I did before. And I've learned that, okay, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I mean, but I will say, I do believe that our male counterparts suffer from imposter syndrome a lot more than we do.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you feel like they deal with it differently than we do? So maybe it pushes them to be a little bit more aggressive and assertive, or
Sure. I definitely think so.
like I didn't know the term until what, 2 or 3 years ago. We went through WOBE. We did the World of Business seminars at home. This was during 2020. And the guy that was on the screen was talking about it. It was like he hit me right between the eyes. It was like, I've always felt this way. I didn't know there was a name for it. I thought I was the only one.
Yeah.
I'm like, did somebody else hear this? And I wondered then if it affected more women. I think maybe you're right. I think it affects us probably about the same. We just may be a little bit more vocal about it because we're more in touch with our feelings. We're going to tell you how we feel. So that's an interesting perspective. Let's talk about motherhood. We're all moms. Lynn has a son. Janet has two boys that I've watched grow up. I think I went to the baby shower for one of them. We won't talk about that. And April has two children. We're all in various stages of motherhood. But what have you learned as a parent that has better prepared you to be a leader?
Oh, probably handling stress, juggling multiple things at once. Yeah, it's definitely very stressful to be. It's more stressful to be a mother than it is a leader. That's for sure.
There's a lot more on the line.
Yeah, so I mean, you handle a lot being a working mom. And I always hate to use that term because working dad is not a term. Well, working mom is a term.
Good point.
Good point. Good point. Lynn, how about you?
I think it's helped me. I'm trying to make him marriageable and employable. And the things that we have to teach him, because they don't come out knowing a thing, sadly. But some of those things are the same traits and characteristics and skills that you want your team to have. And the way I handled, my son's name is Drew, the way I handle situations with Drew are not that different than the way I handle situations with our team. It's all about respecting them, validating their opinions and their feelings, and then using the wisdom that I've gained, sometimes the hard way, to say, okay, let's factor the consequences, and I support the decision that you make.
That's amazing. That's a great perspective. Janet, do you agree with Lynn there?
I do. And I think everything that I've learned as a mother has helped me be a better, I guess, manager.
Mm-hmm.
And just realizing that I think sometimes it was lopsided over the last couple of years, where work came first instead of family. And once I have changed that, my life has gotten a lot better. So just being able to kind of figure that out has helped.
Well, a couple of months ago, we listened to Molly Grantham, and she told us that balance was BS.
Yeah.
You cannot
Sure is.
balance work and life. If you do, you're going to short one of them. Do you agree with that? Do you agree
Yes.
that there's no such thing as balance? You're either going to give something 100% and something nothing. You agree with that?
I do. Yeah. And I mean, this job has always been really great, even when my children, having them here. I always kind of tell Manny and Charlie that they allow me to be a full-time mom. So I'm able to not balance, but juggle appropriately.
Juggle.
Yes.
Yes, that was the word that she used. You don't balance, you juggle.
Juggle.
Lynn, do you find that? I know you have a son who, is he still playing baseball
He is.
competitively?
Yes.
And that's a lot of travel.
It is a lot of travel and a lot of long days at the ball field. He is 4 months away from getting his driver's license. I can't wait. I get a whole lot of my life back. Like Janet mentioned, the juggle, and to quote Molly Grantham, the juggle is real. And one of the wise women who is on our merchandising team at Broad River Retail, she shared an analogy with me just last week when we were in a conversation about rubber balls and glass balls, and which ones are the glass balls and which one of those balls are you going to make sure that you treat like a glass ball. Like sometimes, you never want to drop your child and you never want to drop your spouse. Well, most of the time you don't want to drop your spouse, but you never want to drop your spouse. I mean, you guys we're a team, and you have to decide which one of those rubber balls are you going to let drop. Sometimes they're going to bounce back, and it's not the end of the world. But
That's such an interesting way to look at that, because as I think about juggling, you're still passing it from one hand to the other, and you're gonna drop something. It's inevitable, and like you said, is it going to be a glass one or is it going to be a rubber one? That's an interesting way to think of that. April, if we think balance is BS, but we still need to have some level of balance in our lives, how do you find that? How do you juggle well enough between your duties at home, as a wife and a mother, and a Broad River Retail memory maker? How do you juggle all that?
Asking for help. I am blessed that, I have a wonderful spouse. I have great in-laws. But for a long time, I felt like I had to do it all. The thought of asking my husband to take my kids to the dentist was like, why would I ask him? So finally letting go of some of that control and power and letting somebody else help you out with stuff. Even your coworkers, if I'm overwhelmed with stuff and I have to ask them to pitch in, it's great that, we are all women and mothers, that we have empathy. So we know what it's like. But for the longest time, I felt like I was failing as a mother, failing as an employee, because I had to, my kids were sick. I had to take a few days off. So it's just, like you guys said, you can't do it all. You're not going to be perfect at everything. And it took me a long time and a lot of stress to realize it's okay to let some, work will be okay. So,
Janet, how do you help your team achieve their own balance? How do you help them keep their balls in the air, so to speak?
Definitely a lot of communication. So dealing with, I think, a team of 80, it varies, and everybody needs something at different times. But just being able to have that communication, and see who needs it. And sometimes the person that you don't think needs it really does need it. So just being there, sometimes knowing if they're being a little stressed out, popping in the store, seeing how I can help is just a good way of kind of showing them that we're in this together. It's not just me leading from afar. It's us just being together.
And that's what it's all about. Connect. We got to connect. We got to
do.
stay together. We are a family. We talk about this. That was in our town hall. And one of the reasons they chose connect as the word of the year this year is, we do have to stand in the gap, and we have to figure out what our teams need, what our company needs, what we need as people. And that's That's just a great way to put it. Thanks, Janet. We're almost done. Take a deep breath. So this last question here in this section is, as a leader and mother, what kind of legacy do you hope to leave behind? Lynn, we'll start with you.
I hope to leave the same one that my parents have left with me, and that is one of hard work, integrity, commitment, and integrity, doing the right thing, but knowing that, and I want them to always follow Jesus.
That's an amazing legacy. Janet, how about you?
A lot of the same. Follow Jesus is probably number one. Be a servant, definitely, which my children are far better than I am at any of that. And just be there for your family. You don't know when they're going to be gone. You don't know. Time is something that we can't count on.
April?
Just kind of being a good mentor for my daughter. We talked about mentors earlier. Since I didn't have that one, I make sure to tell her, and I just told her yesterday, you can do it all. You can have your career, you can have a family if you want, or no family, that's fine too. And, teaching my son that, he's going to be a man and possibly a father one day, and your wife's role and job and career are just as important as yours. So kind of helping shape that new generation to make it better for the women down the road to have the careers that they want. They don't have to give up having a family to have a career.
Right. And I think, like, for my own daughters, I remember back one of the first summits we had, Joey Ryman came to speak. I don't know if you two remember, and he talked about the secret campaign and how if girls lose that confidence by the age of 13, it's very hard for them to regain it. And the Fight Like a Girl campaign came around, and it really struck me because I had an 11-year-old daughter at the time, and I thought, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough to build her confidence? And I already had a daughter who was much older, who was always confident in whatever she did, but I could see that the youngest one was going to kind of struggle with that. So it is important to build that in your children, in your daughters, and your sons. We got to make them marriable. We got to make them productive members of society. But we also have to let our daughters know what these powerful women look like. And I think that's the legacy that I'd like to leave behind. So just for fun, couple questions. We're at the end. Are you ready? What was your dream job as a child, Lynn?
Oh my goodness.
What did you want to be when they said, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Oh, I don't remember that far back because I've been a year or two. But I really thought someday that I would take over my dad's business. He had a towing and recovery business, believe it or not. I mean, I learned how to drive a car in a tow truck. I really thought that would be my destiny. And obviously, God had other plans. And my dad was really good to say, you need to go out and make your own way. And he never served anything up to me on a silver platter. And while it may have hurt at the time, I appreciate it so much today.
The things you can't see when you're 15 or 20 years old.
Exactly.
Janet, how about you? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Embarrassing to say, but just because of maybe my background, all I envisioned was being a secretary somewhere. And I know that sounds crazy and silly, but that's what I saw. So kind of coming for what I am now, completely transition, 100%.
April?
I wanted to be a lawyer. And it's funny, I never told anybody in my family as my daughter or anything. And she just did her high school plan. She's about to start high school, and she put down she wants to be a lawyer. I'm like, well, maybe it'll happen. It's kind of like a full circle moment. So maybe she'll have the confidence to actually do that.
That's amazing. I just wanted to be on Broadway, and I'll make it there in some way, shape, or form.
You're leading a podcast.
If it involves the police department or whatever, I will make it there someday. What skill or talent do you have that people might be surprised to know about?
I'm pretty funny.
April is very funny. April is she has a very twisted sense of humor, and I appreciate that because I also have a very twisted sense.
If I get comfortable around somebody, if I joke around you that I really like you. And if I make fun of you, I really like you.
Lynn, how about you?
Oh, years ago, I was a trivia expert. My husband and I both have been on game shows. And so that was our love before we had Drew. And then everything changed then.
It's all baseball now.
That's right.
Janet?
I don't know how good I am, but I do enjoy cooking and ironing. It's my happy place every day. It's weird.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
give you my address
There
after
you
the
go.
show.
Sounds like a typical woman, right?
And the last one here is, if you could have dinner with anybody, living or dead, this is the question that everybody asks in every interview. Who would it be and why?
He has passed on, but it would be my father,
Your father.
and to see what he thought of his grandkids.
Oh,
Mm.
we're gonna need a minute there. Lynn, did you have one?
I feel like it's sort of a canned answer, but I think Oprah,
Oprah?
because she, for the longest time, was one of the most visible, powerful females. And just to talk to her, I mean, she had many, many contacts. She has lots of projects going on, and I'm sure her team has a lot to do with that. But I would just really like to talk to her about, okay, when you started to where you are now, like, did she see
Let's
herself
ask her
in
these
that role?
questions.
Exactly, exactly.
That's amazing. Yeah. I said I was going to channel my inner Oprah today, and I hope I've done that. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Stories from the River. This special series, Women in Leadership, will be coming back at you with a different group of ladies pretty soon. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Stories from the River. To check out more episodes, visit storiesfromtheriver.com. Join us again next week, and remember to like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast.